I don't know how many people in here know the story about Leonard Peltier or about Oglala or about what took place there. I know there's a lot of young people, and if you're under 33 years old, you weren't even born yet, you know. And if you were 43, you're this little kid and didn't watch the news anyway, you know. But what happened there, I'm going to just touch on it real briefly. I know there's a lot of you adults who are probably familiar with it, and older people, like myself, she said older people. But, that doesn't bother me to call me old, because I'm 65 years old, in fact, so you know that. So I've been around a while.
That's flaming youth.
Yeah, the flame's getting dim. Yeah, but anyway, you'd have to kind of understand what precipitated, or is that rain term? I don't know. Anyway, but the shootout that took place. But you know, it starts way before that. It starts back with Columbus landing in the Caribbean islands, where they tried to make slaves out of the people there, you know, and it moved over into the United States, where they wanted to take our land, they wanted to take the resources, you know, and they were violating the ecology of the earth, you know, and our people contested it year after year, nation after nation, land after land across the country, you know. And in 1973, some Indian people took over a place called Wounded Knee, South Dakota, and they had a standoff there against the government, and it eventually ended. We had some concessions from the government about what they would do and what they wouldn't do, which none of them they kept. But right after that, and it was a shooting standoff, 2 Indian men were killed there, but our people weren't there to try to win a pitched battle against the government. All we were doing was just holding them off while we could talk to the world and let the world know what was happening to Indian people. We found that the government and a lot of their crooked agents are kind of like cockroaches. You turn the light on and they start scurrying for, you know, a dark spot. And so what we did is we held it in a way that we could talk to the press and let the world know what was happening in Indian people. Prior to that, most people didn't know what was happening in people. The tribes were all beaten down. Most tribal governments had maybe 15 employees there, and they just kind of dealt with some little petty cash that the government doled out to them. In 1932, the government passed a Reorganization Act, which meant they set up these puppet governments. Prior to that, they had to deal with the hereditary chiefs and headsmen, you know, of the tribe. And when they passed that, they did away with them and became puppet governments, just kind of like they're trying to set up in Iraq. And within the first year, we lost like 90 million acres that first year, because these people, they were just set up to sign off on what the government wanted in these special interest groups. And so we were trying to bring attention to that. The American Indian movement was. It wasn't just in South Dakota, it was all over the United States. And so in doing that, you know, the feds felt like they lost control in South Dakota on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And in the aftermath of that, they were going around, you know, harassing people, trying to get control. And they had a tribal chairman there that was trying to sign away 1/8 of the reservation for gas, oil, and the uranium exploration, and the people were against it. And he was funded by the government. He had a goon squad that were plain clothes, plain cars, and they would go out and harass people who were politically active, and even people who weren't politically active. You know, like those agents who walk up in somebody's yard and they got dogs run out there barking at them and stuff, and they would shoot them, you know. And jerk people out of their cars and handcuff them and take them down to the local police station and book them and then turn them loose, and they had to walk back to their car and catch a ride best way they could. And I know that for a fact because I was one of those people who got tie wrapped. They used tie wraps, you know, and they put them behind you and take you down there. And they would charge you some little misdemeanor thing, and usually if it was a real small thing like interfering with an officer is what they charged me with. They booked me and everything and turned me loose. and I hadn't done anything. I just pulled up to a roadblock. Didn't have nothing on me, anything. And they did that to a lot of people and jerked them around and stuff like that. And some of them, when they tie wrap them, they would tie wrap them real tight and hurt them, things like that. And I know that for a fact. I was there. I saw that. I felt it. And some people got beat up. There was a guy named Pedro Bisnet who was a organizer with the Oglala Civil Rights Organization, they called it. And he was one of the organizers for Wounded Knee. And right after Wounded Knee, some officers stopped him on the road. And they said he pulled a gun. They shot him, killed him. And he had just left a party, or I wouldn't call it a party. It was like a gathering thing at a house. And some other people left right after him, with about 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes after him. And when they come over a hill, they were loading him in an ambulance already, and they had cars out there already. And the nearest place was like about 20 minutes away. So it was something they already were tracking him. They had it all set up, and they pulled it off. And this happened a lot of times. There was about 60 different people killed. There's a poster over here with names of people who were killed prior to the Oglala shootout that Leonard Peltier's in prison for. And the government had created, it's on this wall over here. It's a big poster. And it's an old poster that we had a long time ago, and someone brought it in and put it on the wall there. But, that was something that was happening over and over and over. And these elders on the Oglala community on the Pine Ridge Reservation, they asked Leonard Peltier to come there and some others to help them, to help protect them. And they wanted to start programs for their kids and alcoholism programs. On Pine Ridge, the unemployment rate's like 65%. Alcoholism rate in some areas was 65 to 80%. And we talk about people who are killed by the FBI, people who are imprisoned by the FBI. But let me tell you, it's one thing to stand up against an enemy. It's one thing to be threatened with your life. And it's something to feel empowerment to where you're willing to stand up and fight back yourself. But when you have people who are so beaten down by unemployment, by cultural disruption, by boarding schools that took our people, took away their languages, used to beat them because they would talk their language. And yet in World War I, World War II, it was our languages they used as a code that the enemy could not break. And yet our people are still the poorest of the poor. Even though a lot of people say, well, they got casinos, But that money goes for education and stuff, and it'll take a long time to build back up the devastation that's happened to our people. We're still the poorest of the poor. And I was talking about, people standing up, being shot, being killed. But the worst isn't being shot and being killed. It's when they make you want to kill yourself. When you got a suicide rate, is 8th leading cause of death among Indian people is suicide. Nationally, for Indian people, adults, is 2 and 3 times the national average. In a lot of areas, it's 6 and 7 times the national average for children. They have, I think, I can't remember the exact amount, but it's like 10-year-olds is a real high suicide rate for 10-year-olds, little kids, and that type of thing is worse than being shot by a policeman. When you have people who are so beaten down that they would take their own life, and I don't know who the terrorist experts the United States have, but it has nothing to do with people wanting to get to heaven in a hurry. A lot of our people have been exposed to Christianity so long that in a lot of ways they believe in Christianity. And in Christianity they tell you that you go to hell if you kill yourself. And that's pretty damn bad when people are willing to risk hell as opposed to living here. And when they say this is worse than any hell they could ever come up with, And those are the things we've been trying to change. And that's the things the American Indian Movement, just as a collective people. The American Indian Movement, we call it American Indian Movement, is not really so much an organization as it is an attitude. It's